Welcome to the Krystal Effect. I'm your host, Krystal Appleby, and I'm here to share honest, wild truths I've learned through being a practitioner for myself and others on this crazy journey of life, career, and relating. I'm not crazier, braver, bolder, or more experienced than others. Rather, I do believe I'm here to share with a deeper level of honesty than most. It's just who I am. Superficiality and mediocrity are pure boredom here, and I do believe the deepest truths and depths of our soul will set us and others free. With an allergy to anything withheld in connection and conversation, we're going to dive right into any limits or lies we tell ourselves, pierced through the mediocrity or fears of diving deep into the truth. I hope to give you an opportunity to reactivate your knowing and zeal for living, rather than to be triggered, squander life and joy, and shrink away out of my energy field. But as always, choice is yours. Let's dive in. Welcome to episode 10 of the Krystal Effect. Today's solo episode, I want to dive into the nitty-gritty of maybe a little of what's been going on in my life, but a whole lot of what do we do when we're in a season of feeling just fear, scarcity, lack, frustration of not being in the chapter that we thought we'd be in at this point, or that we ought to be in, or that once we did this, took this step in our business, that we would inevitably, maybe we thought we'd be owed this outcome or certain abundance or compensation or whatever it is on the other side of fear, right? And then we sometimes find ourselves in another pool of fear and frustration and shitstorms. And that's just, honestly, I think the seasons of life sometimes feed us multiple seasons of abundance back to back to back to back. And then sometimes we go through periods where life just has to happen. Things have to shift and shut down for us to see different shadows, for us to see other sides, and for us to allow life to happen in the background. I mean, you think about all the variables going on in your life, there's bound to be seasons that are tougher than the others. No matter where your mindset's at, no matter how much self-help, personal development you've done, you're going to find yourself in these seasons that just feel like shit, So how do we navigate those? Whether you're a business owner, an entrepreneur, or in your current career, how do we navigate these chapters and seasons so that we aren't just trying to let the days go by? Because we feel like, in a month's time, it'll be over. It's okay. We just need to get through X, Y, and Z, right? But the thing is that life is so finite. And this season for me has been so, I guess, beautiful to be able to watch and be with Reese in every day and see, like, every day is important. If you waste one day, you're going to regret that later. So what are you doing with each day? And I've really been letting that translate into my business. If I'm not feeling inspired, well, how many seasons do you let yourself pass by without taking action because something in you's longing for something, because you're ready to get to this chapter, because you think you should have this by now, because you're so done with blah, 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 blah. And I would say insert environment, insert relationships, promotion, stepping out onto your own, wherever you're at, where you're looking forward and feeling ready to receive something. Empathy, because I don't think I've ever been in such a strong sensation of this myself. And to be honest, I probably have been for over a year, of ready for the next chapter. I can feel it's right around the bend. I just know there's something beyond this. There's something else I'm supposed to be doing. How many times do we say these things to ourselves when we have no actual fucking clue? We're just guessing. We're just like, we want that to be the case. We want to have the money. We want to have the person. We want to have these pieces. But without taking consistent action, without consistently working on our mindset every day, I think about this, there's two parallels in our self-development and our personal journey, and then in our relationships with everyone around us and everything around us. Are we actually consistently taking action and working to try and make it work? Or are we thinking that if we just are in our heart and feel into what we want to happen in the world or what we're here to do, that it will unravel and unfold just as it's meant to do? That's beautiful. And I've witnessed that happening in my life. But without showing up in those relationships, without showing up in our career and taking action and putting the grit in that, we committed to when we signed on the dotted line of a contract of whatever, when we created something, when we chose to enter into a relationship with something or someone, why did we believe that we didn't have to continuously, consistently keep showing up through the muck? When did life, the universe, God, source, whatever you buy into, promise you at any point along the journey that you could stop showing up and taking action and being an active participant in your journey to receive the abundance, to receive that feeling of like full love, joy? Where did that come from? I see a society, where the spiritual world is very much in this energy of manifest and you should receive. I've lived that. And I've lived some really fucking cool manifestations. And none of them have lasted without showing up through the muck. None of them have paid off long term without showing up through the muck and being vulnerable and like in the grit in every sticky situation, conversation, pitfall, whatever's happening, right? And yes, I see this through the lens of business and entrepreneurship and, through my lens of as being a contractor for the first few years of my career, you do have this idea that something's owed to you, right? Like I've put time in here. I make more money than anybody else here for this business. Therefore, I should deserve blah, 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 blah. And then you move into business and owning your own business and see why slowly over time, the things that you thought you were owed weren't given to you because you actually didn't do the grit and the work to deserve that passiveness for somebody else's business. You didn't. You showed up, you signed a contract that said, this is the exchange for these services. Hopefully, you showed up and you held that end of the bargain and then some and created a really beautiful clientele in exchange for that with that exchange of money. But at no point in the contract or the relationship was it probably said to you that you would deserve or be owed or have these extras, this, increase of blah, 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 whatever that looks like along the way for simply fulfilling your contract. And I bring this up because it's such a deep, I just remember feeling so much frustration and lack of appreciation in my past job because of this. And it wasn't until probably, I slowly started learning the lessons right away of like, oh, I see why they did that. I see why they did that. I see why they did that. But within a year or two, really having an appreciation for the opportunity that I was given to build a clientele quickly, to make money in return for that, consistent money quickly, to go travel and take all the courses and all the things I wanted to do quickly. And then when you step out on your own, you see and are shown how much more is required to now show up at even the same capacity as you have in the past when life is in the muck, but now you're not just showing up as the practitioner, or we could say the person on salary, the person who comes at 9 and leaves at 5, or whatever your dynamic is. Because now you have to uphold the foundation of the business, especially when you're still building it and creating a foundation and letting it settle in and getting to know it and really finding that cohesiveness with it, where it doesn't just feel like this thing that's now bogged you down in a sense because there's a lot more responsibility and you're trying to learn to be an accountant. And well, hopefully you're not and you're hiring these things out, but there is a level of knowledge that has to happen for us to really step into owning a business and having a relationship with a business so that hopefully quickly that business can support you and hold space for you so that when life does come up, for me in this current chapter, this is the first time in my life where really I feel like I have something that supports me and holds me within the muck. But I just feel it's important to share that doesn't happen. Sometimes it can happen overnight. But my point isn't to say that you have to do X amount of time to deserve this or blah, blah. I don't believe that. I believe we can bypass a lot of these steps and we can buy into mentorship and these different containers or different teachers where we can skip a lot of those steps if we simply find the right person that really aligns with us and our vision and where we're going, and they've been there and they can help us get through that much quicker. Absolutely. But the flip side to that is you still have to catch up. So you still have to be able to have a capacity that now holds a business, maybe practitioners within a business or contracts, deadlines, whatever that looks like for you. How do you still show up in the same manner when nobody's holding you to it but you? How do you build a business and integrity in that business and not let it just become about solely money? Say when you need to refund somebody for something that's like, there becomes these little annoyances along the way where there's mistakes made or whatever. How do you hold integrity above all else when now there's these temptations because it is all on you? It's nice to see money coming in. It's nice to, see these things. And then you start to see why business owners get kind of greedy. All right. I'm doing something I've never done on here before, but I came into the studio to record an episode today, and I found this last episode, the last 10, 11 minutes that I just put in this episode from 2 months ago, almost to the date. And I felt it was important to go back and listen. When you make that journal entry or you make something on Canva that you're going to post and it just doesn't feel right. That happens when you do podcasting too. Sometimes it's like last fall, I made, I think, like 10 to 15 episodes before I was able to post one. And I share this because this is life. I remember recording this back in July. And then I went through a giant transformation, probably that day or the next day. I had a series of messages come in that kind of just like shifted me and threw me off kilter. And I just went into this self-worth spiral where I didn't really realize until this moment when I went back and listened to this and was listening to my own wisdom and thinking, this is important stuff that people need to know, that people need to hear. And wow, like I'm gaining wisdom from my own words. And isn't that kind of the best barometer in our life? If we're being inspired by our own content, our own words, the way we're moving about the world, isn't that it? Isn't that good enough? I had a friend reach out today and say, yours and someone else's are the only newsletters that I read. Everyone else sucks at storytelling, which is like a generalization. But I was flattered, but I was like, okay, but all I do is open my heart. When I go into a space where I'm going to write a newsletter, I know that I need to open up and let more of me pour through than protective, worried, past Krystal would like to. And that's it. And when I read them, before I send it, I have to be proud of it. Otherwise, I put it aside. So clearly, that's what happened with this episode. And I loved that I ended. I had no clue that this was in here. And I was listening and I was like, this is so important. But I realized when I said, how do we stop? I ended it with something along the lines of stop ourselves from just getting into the greed that is business, because it's so easy to slip into that. And I say that from experience of, you start with this vision, you want to help people, you want to make an impact, you want to make things better for people. And with that, often you want to make things more affordable, or you don't want to, you're like, well, these people were greedy, I'm not going to do it that way. But that was your perception that they were greedy, right? Like I look back at my old business owners and or my old bosses, and maybe I thought that along the way. And then the more I stepped into business, the more I understood it, and the more I made mistakes, the more I realized like, wow, I'm doing a lot of this for free from the goodness of my heart. Well, that just leads me to frustration, which means that I then start to put out less. I then start to have less space to show up in my community, in the world, in the way that I initially wanted to, in the way that actually helped inspire people to get out on their own and follow their visions, in a way that helped these people have access to deeper healing, deeper self-awareness, deeper whatever they're seeking. Now I've robbed that because I'm not in satisfaction. I'm not being lit up by my work, by my business, because the profit isn't there, because other people in my business are making more than me and I'm putting in all the grit, or whatever the storyline is you want to say. I think it's important. I didn't want to put this message out, I'm pretty sure, because I didn't want people in my business to listen to it and start to judge me and start to think that I was projecting onto them. And so I think it's great that when we come back and listen to these things from a new lens and think like, okay, yes, I was moving through something when I recorded that. Absolutely. And there's potency in here. And there's truth in our frustrations. And if you're a business owner, I really encourage you to start to step up into your business with that leadership, with that ownership. Don't need to be everybody's friend or feel like it has to be better for them than it was for you. Yes, of course, we want things to be better than it was for us. If we were in a toxic environment, if we didn't have that piece of community, if we felt like the exchange was unfair or people weren't holding up their words, like I remember working in a place where it was in my contract that I got X% off of this, every piece of this that I sold. And not once in 3 years did they stand up to that after I mentioned it twice. And it just became this thing of like, life will provide this back to me in some form down the road. I'm tired of fighting for this, but that is something that I will never
powering off
bring into my business moving forward. And that's how we grow. But how do we keep it so that we don't fall into that greed in our business? Because at the end of the day, I can tell you right now, I recorded that podcast episode 2 months ago, not having a clue, not thinking that Reese would still be here. I'd still be in a position where I can't go work on a regular basis. And I haven't built a clientele down here that supports me. And being in this 2-month longer limbo than I thought I had already kind of outdated. And how do you still sit in that? And when your shit's going down, this is something I've been having a conversation with my mom about over and over again. Like, this feels frustrating in my business. This feels unfair. This feels not right. Like, I overextended here. This isn't working. And then coming back to my center and saying, how much of this isn't working? And how much of this is the easiest place for us to project onto in our business when our own life feels like it's falling apart? So my big learning the last few months has been, how do I come back to me, my truth, my why I started this business, what its impact is for, why I attracted and wanted the practitioners in it that I have and I'm so proud and like grateful to have in there. And then how much of what I'm frustrated about is because I can't make a move in my business. There's certain pieces that there's more constraint around than there's ever been in my life. So how much of that, if I was working for someone else, which I am now, would I still be frustrated about? How much of that are we projecting out? And I think that's the number one thing we can do as leaders, not just business owners, but leaders. If you're leading people, and you are, because somebody's watching you, somebody's looking up to you, how do we make sure that we're holding our own shit when life is like at the ultimate? Like, to me, this is the toughest chapter of my life that I've been in so far. And I share that not from like a pity or life is so rough, because I realize that there's still so much privilege in that. But this is a dark night of the soul for me. This is a point where I've never had so much come up on my plate at once to be reviewed, processed, strategized, dealt with. So in those moments, it's not fair to run to the one thing that we have control over, whether that's a relationship, your business, whatever it is, and start to, cut luxuries, cut like, oh, they don't appreciate this, blah, 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 blah. Like, whoa. Okay. And make a list and be with that and see what's actually true and see where you're getting frustrated, where you actually didn't lead or bring clarity or boundary or expectation and implement that in the beginning. And so now, hopefully, you have opportunists in your business because you want people who are smart, opportunistic, and have integrity and trust and honor, right? I don't want robots in my business. So if they see a loophole and they go for it, kudos, because I've done that my whole life. I've always found these places where I wasn't breaking rules. I was seeing opportunity and going for it. So we can't get mad. Well, we can, but it's not appropriate. And it's not really in integrity to then go and point fingers where people have taken advantage of where you haven't had a voice or you haven't stepped into leadership and owned your backbone and stood tall and set standards, set expectations, set, boundary for what feels good for what you've created. Your business is your business. You should have control over it. You should have boundaries in it. You should have expectations. You should have these contracts and these things. And if you started out in the beginning without that, have compassion for yourself. If you were trying to be everybody's friend and you're people pleasing like me, bled over into the one place where you felt like you could be of service and make things better for people, like have compassion for that version of you, wherever that's rooted in, and then have the ownership to change it. I was recently talking to a friend about business and, she's worried that if she implements this and it doesn't work, then what? If we do this, then this, what, like, how am I going to be perceived? And I would argue that we're all just on this journey pivoting as we need to, right? So you have to also have the ownership to say, I know things were this way and that is no longer working. What worked when I had myself and maybe one part-time practitioner in the space no longer works. If I allow that dynamic to happen, my business cannot sustain itself. While these things are growing in price and overhead, and then I'm offering more and more and more to more practitioners, it doesn't work. And you have to start to let go of how you're going to be perceived and act from integrity. Don't go and have the conversation, write the email. And I'm saying this as like I've done it and I've learned, hopefully, but it's still a journey that we have compassion for ourselves along the way. Don't do it when you're in the charge state of like, this isn't working. They have the good end of the deal. They don't appreciate me, blah, 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 blah. Those are all normal things that are going to happen in your business. Own it. But you must find space in your life to grow your capacity to a space where you can sit in that, where you can go sit on the mountain, where you have your tribe, your community, your network of people that you can go and say like, fuck, this is what's happening in my business. I'm really pissed off. And this is how I feel about it. Like you better have, whether it's a mentor or, close friendships. It doesn't really matter as long as it's reciprocal and there's like a dynamic that has been established there. That's where you take that stuff. You do not take it into your business and put it on your people, which I have done. You don't go to the one that's a closer friend and say, like, bleed those frustrations to kind of let the steam settle, like clear enough, and then come back to this place where like you didn't actually make a big enough shift. And now you're trying to make these micro movements that make you feel better without having to have big conversations. Business can be the most beautiful initiation in your life if you allow it. Leadership can be the most beautiful initiation in your life if you allow it. And you will have to let go of how you're going to be perceived. You will have to let go of your people pleasing, and you will have to let go and find a way to release trying to control how you're viewed by others and come back to your own heart over and over. Come back to the fact that a business is here to make money. If you go to a job, there is the expectation that you make money, and it's okay to have that expectation. It is no different. You are creating a business, hopefully, that is this beautiful extension of your heart, and it's here to serve, and it's here to lead, and it's here to create opportunity for others. And that's beautiful. And it needs to support you. If your business doesn't support you and has no foreseeable future of supporting you or your loved ones, you will end up resentful. You will end up feeling like you're in failure. You will end up projecting your stuff onto somebody. You will not end up in a place of like proud service to humanity, to your community, wanting to give. I have set boundaries in my business, and I have set up Saluna how I have, because it must support me. I always say the best thing that ever happened to me was that I had no plan B. I didn't have a partner that I could lean on if I didn't make rent. I didn't have a job that I was relying on until, which there's nothing wrong. Like I always tell clients, they have to have their own dynamic, right? If you're supporting a family, no, don't go quit your job and start a business with no clientele and where you have to pour a bunch of overhead in. Like we don't manifest. The majority of us do not manifest from scarcity. Good luck. It's going to be chaotic. It's going to be, not to say it can't work, but why would you put yourself and your nervous system and your family and whoever through that, right? So everybody's journey is going to be different. Some people want to take 2 years to transition out. Some people, like for me, it was just like, I'm done. But I had kind of, in a sense, overstayed and been okay with that, knowing that enough people will show up for me to move into the next level of service I'm here to do. So all of that to say, in my experience in this season of my life, it has been incredibly easy to slide into greed in business, to want to create rules and control in my business and see it as the problem in my life, because everything else happening in my life is uncontrollable. Reese, don't know, don't have a timeline, don't want to wish a timeline. Just other avenues in my life that have happened this year. It's all been like, here's this and you can't control it. Here's this, it's written, you can't control it. Okay, we're going to put you on this mountain, and you had this vision that you were going to be in the ocean, at the ocean in a year through this visa, and like had all these plans, finally was ready to settle in, and life was like, sorry, that's not happening for many reasons. So when that happens, what are you going to anchor into? And this is where I am so grateful for the last 10 years of my life, where I have been doing different modalities, learning different modalities, seeing different practitioners, and learning from different practitioners to land in a space of like, life has given me the experiences and the knowledge for me to now sit in this and say, nope, I will no longer project out to the partner. I will not project out to my family. I will not project out to my clients. I will not project out to the practitioners when I'm trying to problem solve. I will go inside to this beautiful library of trust that I have built, and I will breathe, and I'll be here as long as I need to. And something that I've learned in this chapter that I don't think you get to learn anyway, other than being in it, is that life doesn't take you to the edge to throw you off so that you smash your face on the ground on the way down. And I think so many of us have a fear that we're being pulled into a direction, pulled into a new layer of business, new layer of life, relationship, whatever. And you have that knowing, you have that sense that like, this is what I need to do, I'm supposed to do, there's no other way. But we don't actually trust that something bigger than us is pulling our soul there. So we worry about the money, we worry about this, we worry about that. And all I will say is that when the timing comes in your life and you're asked to be initiated into something, like for me, to not be up north, to be with Reese, to be in the mountains, to be like living in the she shed, like it's absolutely constraint and pressurizing for me. And the most beautiful lessons that have come out of that are that you're not here to be screwed over by life. So yes, if I look in front of me and there's no doors that I'm ignoring that want to open for me, there's no opportunity or conversation in front of me that's begging and vying for my attention, and I'm like, no, I am in stillness. It's uncomfortable. And there's nowhere else that I'm supposed to be. I can't think of anything. Yeah, I'd love to hop on a plane. Can't happen. I'd love to be diving or surfing. Can't happen. I'd love to be up north working and putting money away. Not an option right now. So if I truly know that and believe that, then I have to trust, okay, well, even the little things like my bills this month. What do you want me to do, life? It's like, okay, if there's nothing coming up, and it's like, no, don't focus on your personal brand. Like, this total surrender is the chapter of my life right now. Every time I went to post and do things, it just was like sticky, not in a way of my limiting beliefs, but in a way of, is this actually the way forward for your business? Or are you trying to do things the way everybody else is doing them or has told you to do them? You've never had, that has never worked in your life. You've always found another avenue and really just followed your heart, and then things explode from there. So maybe this season is trying to stall you from all of that so that you don't create a whole business, a whole nother brand, a whole nother life from something that's not actually you. So if we're in that season, you lean back and you trust. How can you not trust when all the stars have aligned to put you where you are, when all the odds are stacked against things being how they are? Like, Reese should not be here. There's like 20 other things that should technically not, like, just don't make sense that are happening right now. So if I'm here in this situation, now I start to trust. I can do the math and say, okay, well, this is what I need the clinic to bring in this month. This is what I need to take as clients. This is, if I took one private client. But if life's like slapping me in the face and be like, stop, 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 can you stop and trust? And that's this process I've been in. And like, okay, I trust then. Here's my bills. Make it happen. I will sit here and surrender and let go of my attachment to the material world, to all the things that I have found or attached success to, found instant gratification or validation in, and I'll let it all go. And then what? And what I've been learning is that it always works out through some way. Whatever I put out, I'll be talking to friends and saying like, okay, well, this is what the universe needs to make up this month if I'm not supposed to go up north. And then somehow it kind of just falls into line and it always works out. And the funny thing is that whenever I say like, okay, I need this much, I remember last time I went up north, I made to the dollar what I claimed I needed. So then we have to be careful too and say like, oh, I'm limiting because I'm in this season that feels really constricting. So now am I starting to like limit what is possible, what we're capable of? And can I start to say like, now I'm just in my own way, and open the floodgates in different ways of like, I can be in this chapter of surrender. I can be in this chapter where I'm not meant to really work, and I can still receive overflow. But I think that's something our nervous system has to adapt to. For me, I know now, after enough seasons of doing this, I can't go from getting by making X amount to 10xing my income and being in overflow and holding that overnight. I'd love to say it, but I've gotten it. I've made it happen. But the thing is, my nervous system has never to this point been ready to fully receive that and hold that long term. And why? Well, the more that I dive into, I don't want to say my healing, because we all have healing. It's the journey. It's life. It's never going to stop. And if we're here to evolve, it's just going to continue on, right? But when I start to reflect back on like the little pieces that are showing up in relationship and these different aspects of my life that I'm starting to let go of and like take the charge away from, of course, I haven't been able to go from here to here. You can call it childhood trauma, you can call it whatever. Like, none of us escape without it. We're not born into a vacuum. We're not meant to be. These are the experiences that were meant to happen so that we can evolve through them. And yes, hopefully the next generation gets to move through that so much quicker because we have more awareness. We help them just come in with that awareness and let go of some of the stuff that happens in life. And hopefully they get to exponentially grow, right? And receive and live in abundance and all these things quicker than us, even though it's going to trigger us. But I digress. I really believe that we are here to have such radical self-acceptance and responsibility that we start to shift this paradigm for those that have gone before us and those that come after us. And we start to show a new way of doing business, not in that like we're here to make more money, we're here to da 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 da. But I do believe that the end result will be that, simply because we're here to lead from our hearts. We're here to be like, this is in my heart and it will not go away. And I'm going to keep exploring until I fully understand it, until I fully know or at least feel it and can give it a medium in the world to come to life to, without an expectation that it's going to do this for me. It's going to support my family. It's going to give me fame. It's going to give me validation. I'm finally going to feel this. I'm going to have this life. Da, 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 da. What if these things that come to us are simply just like deep soul desires that want to explode, come out through our hearts? And in that process, it's opening us up to life so that we are able to receive more of life and find abundance in these chapters, even when life feels like a shitstorm. And through that process of opening up and like our hearts cracking open over and over and over again, and we lean more into vulnerability and depth, our relationships expand, all these things expand. Yes, the business expands, the business grows, it gives us opportunity, it creates opportunity for others, it can create generational wealth, it can create so much freedom in our lives. But I truly believe that the most satisfying, the most brilliant, beautiful businesses really come from the people who crack their hearts open and let the creation pour through them without trying to control it, without trying to morph it into something that makes sense, without overanalyzing or like keeping constant tabs on the financials, on the this, on the that. All that's important. But the more that we let go of the control around that, whether we hand it over to someone else so that we're not constantly nitpicking and like keeping eyes on every piece of it and can be in our full creation and allow others to support that, the more these businesses will become these beautiful creations in the world that create massive impact. So that's not where I planned on going, but that's just, I'm trusting what pours out of me, and that this process of getting this out of my own voice and sharing this is also healing for me, is also hopefully something for me and my nervous system to be like, let's come back here every week. Let's get back to consistency in this. Yes, we can't control a lot going on in our life. Yes, there's moments where we feel like the victim, and then there's moments where we pull ourselves out of it and are like, okay, and I'm supposed to be in stillness. But then where are we actually being pulled to still crack our heart open when our heart feels like shattering? Like I wrote a newsletter yesterday because I knew I had to start somewhere. And the thing is that our business becomes such a personal thing to us if we're really, truly in love with it and, really fully let it unravel and become this extension of us. It becomes really personal. So for me, when shit's hitting the fan, when I'm taking a step back into my hermit mode and I'm just like unraveling all these beliefs around relationship and love and these things I'm calling in while being present with losing my dog in this chapter, it's hard to show up vulnerably. As much as I love to have deep conversations with my friends and think that I'm really open, there's still these places where it's hard and it's vulnerable, right? Because we have these perceptions of how I know how I viewed other business owners when I was not one or was first starting out. And I'm sure how I will in the future of where I am now, right? That we should have our shit together. Like keep your other stuff behind closed doors, do this, do that. But the fact is that our business is so personal because it's an extension of us. So if we want it to fully become, if we want people to fully be captivated by what we're here to do, by the impact that it could create and collab or buy into or promote or whatever you want, you're going to have to crack open. You're going to have to crack open in every season. Nobody wants to only see your highlights. I have friends like that. They appreciate that I come to them, pour my heart out when shit's hitting the fan, and they're like, wow, thank you so much. I love this dynamic. But they don't reciprocate, and that's okay. But it does create like a less fulfilling relationship. And I think it's the same in business. When I go to businesses and I just see the heart when I walk in the door and I see without like this chaotic ungroundedness, the realness in them, in their business of like, hey, have you ever gone through this? Or like just this real talk. To me, that's when I get excited. That's when I'm like, it's going to work or it's going to become whatever it's here to become. And if it's not here to become, like I truly don't believe that every business is here to go on forever. Like I remember having conversation with friends in business that were talking about closing their business. And it's like a relationship. You brought it here for a purpose. Don't ignore that. Don't deny that. And don't question that. You were here to grow from it, and other people in the community get to grow from it, have access to it, have whatever. And I think it's really hard when we come into a season of questioning, or when, like, the honeymoon phase is over with your business. Then how do we let it reconfigure to what it's actually meant to be or not meant to be? I know people who have such a big hang up on, like, what if my business failed? And it's like, well, what if it was meant to end? What if you're here for something bigger that can't actually pour through you until there's a finite ending with this initial thing that you brought to life? What if that has to have a finale? And your belief system or your identity that was attached to that needs to crumble to the ground, have a tower moment, for you to actually have the grit, the knowledge, the wisdom, the experience, the tools, the support, all the things to actually bring something way bigger to life. And that doesn't mean that it has to be a bigger business, but like way bigger impact that you're here to do. And that can be building a family. That can be how present you want to be in another piece of your life, or supporting. I think about this experience has really brought light to, like, we're all going to lose, like, our parents, our, loved ones, and life's going to slap us in the face. It's not like being in this season with Reese. A big piece of it has been just coming to realizations of life, of like, this phase of life is over, where I go travel the world and have no cares and don't consider not that I didn't consider others, but I knew everybody was okay on their own. And then you hit a point in life where it's like, shit, well, how do I want to move forward in life now? I don't really want to move across the world and start a life across the world, knowing that my parents are, approaching 70. And like, what do you want your relationships to be like for the rest of your life? You better create a business that's going to support you so that you can have those dynamics. Because I can tell you from being in this chapter, and it's just like this mini snapshot. It's a dog. And yes, she means the world to me, but it's not the same as a parent, a sibling, a family member. At the end of the day, it's not, because I just know that it's a different layer, right? And I will grieve it and I will be sad, and it's different. I lost my train of thought there. But so how do you want to be able to show up in the hard seasons of life? And how do you want to be able to show up in the good seasons of life? And your business better be able to support you in both of those. And I'm not saying day one, you're not going to have to put in hard work or do the reps, do the things. But I'm saying that if there's not flow, if doors aren't opening, because through all of this, it hasn't actually been stuck. There's still flow happening. There's still people coming in. There's still people applying. There's still like things happening, right? It's just a season of pause of like, should I really be taking that on? Should I really be growing my business in this moment? Is it actually my ego or like fear, or what's actually driving the ship here for growth? So set your business up in a way that it gets to continue to be this beautiful creative outlet for your soul to just keep pouring into and keep becoming, because that will never lead you nowhere. Even if it leads to like the finale of a business, it's going to just like unravel you to there. And then from there, you're going to keep unraveling that spool into something new, into something that your soul is ready to pour into in the next season. But allow yourself to claim that you deserve and you desire to have a career, a business, a life that supports you. And I would encourage you to dive into all of your relationship. Like, some of the most important pieces in that are like the environment you're living in, the relationships you're calling in or in, the people that you're bringing into your business, your friendships. Like, these pieces, don't take them lightly. If you want a life that supports you to get to this piece that, like, in your soul, whether it's I want to travel the world and give my family freedom to have this and not be financially stressed, you get to choose. Let it come through, and it's going to evolve. Your why is just going to continue to evolve and take up space. But you have to start to own that so that you can actually feel into and feel worthy of having a business that's going to support you, having a business that's profitable and doesn't take years to get there. That's just a non-negotiable for me. That's how I'm wired. And just having a business that supports the life you want. You can have it. You can do it. And it doesn't mean that it has to be like, don't get caught in the minutia. I remember thinking like, I can't have a business in Fort McMurray. I'll never get to the ocean. I didn't know that it was the avenue that would help me get to the ocean. And even now it's like, well, I remember then the next block is like, well, then I can't own a business in Fort McMurray and not be there. People think I'm not You create all these storylines. And sure, maybe some people do think that. I'm just going to keep following my soul mission. And I could think about like, oh, am I doing enough for this community, or am I doing enough of this? Am I blah, 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 blah. But remember, like, are people thinking that in their jobs every day? Like, oh, I should be volunteering more. I'm getting paid this salary. That's probably more than most business owners are making at the end of the day when you pull everything away out of it. No, you're allowed to have a lifestyle, a career, a business that supports you. And when you feel pulled, when you're like, holy shit, like these people have so little and I have so much, then go create impact how you want to and be really grateful that you have the opportunity to do that. But don't get into the guilt and shame, or you're going to limit yourself. You're going to stay in scarcity. You're going to create a business from scarcity where you have clients that are now in scarcity and don't want to pay you more than X, or expect you to work your ass off to deserve this. Or I digress. This was supposed to be a quick 10-minute recap on to July's message, but that's what happens when you don't podcast for 2 months. So thank you for being here. Thank you for letting these pieces of my soul come forward and letting me come back to life, because this really, at the end of the day, I do this because it makes my soul happy. It does something for me, especially in this season where I feel like so many pieces of my life are a bit constrained and a bit unknown and a bit in the air. We have to remember that we do have choice always. And I say that, as always, choice is yours, right? And it's true. But sometimes we lose our own way. And as business owners, it's going to happen, and that's okay. And you're going to have to play with the dynamic and pendulum swing from like totally checking out to totally being involved, and then finding that dynamic that actually brings you joy. I just took over a bunch of stuff in Saluna, all the insurance stuff and stuff that I had outsourced, and I never thought I would take back. But it just felt like in this season, this is the right thing to do, to have my hands in here. And that's what's brought me back into creativity in my business of like, I'm so appreciative for Saluna. I'm so appreciative for the people in it. And there's pieces that I want to shift and change, and just let yourself play. That's the biggest thing. When people come to me and they don't get business and they're frustrated and they're trying to call this in and this isn't happening and they want this. And it's like, you have to play in your business. You have to get curious and creative. And if you ever lose that, it's not just like, that's how we start a business. We have all this gusto, and then it helped create momentum, and it brought in money, and we had impact in the beginning, and we created wealth in the beginning. And then all of a sudden we got bored. And kind of like any relationship, you have to keep playing and stay curious and stay in love with it. If you're not in love with your business, why would other people be? Why would your practitioners be? Energy is felt. And I always say sometimes it's like the biggest crutch sometimes, because it's like I'm a horrible liar. So when something's going on in my life, I may as well just be upfront, because it's going to ooze out of my energy anyway. So I've had seasons of that too, where it's like, why are people not, like, practitioners not invested in my business right now? Or why are they being slack? Or why whatever? It's like, come back to you, because you are. What's going on in your life? And how can you fall back in love with your business? And if you can't, how can you come to terms with that and shift gears as soon as possible so that it has the least amount of impact on you and you can get back into prosperity, abundance, joy, creation, etc., whether that needs to be in a new avenue or whatever that needs to be. So thanks for joining today's tangent. I hope you have a beautiful fall, and I'll be back soon. Thanks for joining us today. That is it. Be courageous, be bold, let anyone down but yourself along the way as you confidently activate or trigger the correct players in your pinball game. And with an open and defined heart, I encourage you to go forward with curiosity and create the depth and satisfaction in the entirety of your life the entirety of your career, the entirety of the relationships that your soul came here craving, seeking, destined to create. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love it if you left a review below. You can reach me at thekrystaleffect.com or on Instagram, the.krystal.effect. We'll leave that below.